one day the people from Christian Legal Society come up from Washington, come into Philadelphia, and they have this vision of planting Christian legal aid. A lot of people have a hard time with the concept of putting Christian and lawyer together. You ever notice that? People say, you're a what kind of lawyer? I didn't know there were Christian lawyers. But the Christian Legal Society came to Philadelphia, and they had a model, and at that time they were starting to open Christian legal aid clinics in Salvation Armies. It worked out, and so we decided to go along with it. And the first meeting we had was at the Salvation Army in West Philadelphia. And I come through the door, and you know who I see? This smiling guy with his loud voice and this bald head. And he turns around and he looks at me. We hadn't seen each other for 10 years. And it was just like God meant it to be. It was my confirmation and his confirmation that God was bringing us back together with a different kind of ministry. Instead of ministering to young people, we're going to minister to families, minister to people who need legal ministry and who need spiritual ministry. The one thing that's been really clear in the 10 years that we've been working in West Philadelphia is, and if you really think about it, I honestly believe it's true, and I think you will too, most of the legal problems that people get into have a spiritual origin, have a spiritual root. Now, secular lawyers miss that part of it. Because secular lawyers, it's just, okay, you got a legal problem, I know how to give the legal solution, we'll go to court, we'll get it resolved. They take their fee, and the client and the relationship is over. And you have resolved one issue for that person or that family. But you haven't made them a better person, and you haven't really empowered them or enabled them to prevent a next problem from coming along. You haven't really solved the root of the problem. And the one thing that I have seen in our clinics and in the clinic here, and just last week we opened Carroll Park with our first client, is when somebody comes in and tells you they have this legal problem and that legal problem, by the time you trace it back to a spiritual root. And the majority of the people come to our clinics because they trust the people who are housing the clinics. And they trust Pastor Tony, and they trust the people here at IUTA, and they're believing people. There are people who, almost everybody who comes into the West Philadelphia clinic at one time had a mother or a grandmother praying for them, or behind them, or teaching them, or spoon-feeding them their spirituality, and they got away from it. And so they got away from God's law, and they got introduced to man's law. And so when they come into the clinic, they're a victim of man's law, and they've forgotten the grace, the righteousness, and the goodness of God's law. And the reason I'm in clinic, if you ask me why I'm in clinic, because I have an opportunity to impart some of God's law, and I have an opportunity just to show someone, you got off track. Your grandmother was teaching you right. Your mother was teaching you right. Your father was on the right track with you, and somewhere you got headstrong and went off. And if you notice, as soon as you go off, you start having a litany of problems. And if you can show someone that the problems come because they're not following God's law, at least you can show them the way back, right? The choice is always theirs. The choice, just like our choice, our free choice to accept Jesus as our Messiah, is a free choice for us. Their choice to go back and follow God's law and avoid the problems of man's law is their choice. But the Christian legal clinics, the neat thing about us and the neat thing about what you do here and what's being done, and hopefully will be done all over the city, is we can make a difference in people's lives that lasts. It lasts. Because once they see, I got off the path and I got in a problem, then they know how to avoid future problems. That's getting back, sitting at the foot of the cross, reading their Bible, going to church, fellowshipping with believers, which is what we're all taught, right? We're all taught that's how you stay on the straight and narrow. And so that's part of what we do, and one of the things that astonishes a lot of the people. And I remember when Regina would come, we got her first in West Philadelphia before someone took her to North Philadelphia. But we won't talk about that. Was just having someone, if you have Regina in a room, myself, Charles, I won't tell you our ages, but you could have about 80 years of legal experience. sitting at one table. One person comes in with a litany of problems. They could never in a million years afford the type of advice that they get in an hour or in 2 hours. And we can take all of that experience in a godly way and lay it out for them. And it humbles them, but more importantly, it opens their heart. Here you have lawyers ministering to them. That shatters one myth right away. Christian lawyers, that shatters another myth. 3, we're free. It doesn't cost a dime. That shatters another myth. And then we can actually say to them, this is a problem we can help you with. This is your way out. And this is a way to prevent it from happening again. That's empowerment. That's absolute empowerment.